Good day, everybody. Hey, this is Rob Mazak. I am a psychic medium, and as usual, I will do this podcast straight from the heart. I'm not going to script anything or read anything or prepare anything. I'm just going to pick a topic, an idea, and we're going to let it roll and once again see where it takes us. And the topic I wanted to talk about tonight may not be as lively and as fun as some of the other ones I've talked about, because I do talk about some crazy things. But I want to talk a little bit about death. And I think that we all know in our hearts that we are not going to be able to escape death, and it's something that we are all going to have to face at one time. But when it happens to others especially, it really doesn't make a lot of sense to us. Even though we understand the process, or we think we understand it, still have a hard time wrapping ourselves around, or our minds around, the idea that someone could possibly just simply be gone. We just talked to them last week. We just had a fun event together yesterday. Now they have died. And a lot of us have to try to make sense of it, because living is one thing and dying is another. But the thing is, we can't focus on dying so much that we forget to live. We may circle back a little bit on that one. But the process of death, I think, is what really scares us more than the idea of death. Because let's just face it, we go to sleep every night. We spend a third of our lives, basically around a third of our lives, if we sleep 8 hours a day out of 24 hours that we have in the day. And really, it's basically an interaction with death without the full commitment. Because when we go to sleep, we are essentially separated from this reality, and we have no idea generally what's going on in our reality, unless there's really loud noises or things that might wake us up. But I think you understand where I'm going. In a lot of ways, we experience the dying, or the actual piece of death to our reality, at least. We're still functioning while we sleep. Our heart's still beating, our lungs are still going, blood's still pumping. All these things are happening, and our bodies are resetting. But essentially, it's in a lot of ways like death light. I don't know, that's a strange way to put that. And I think the reason I wanted to talk about death is because it has come to the forefront in my world, within the group that I serve with now. And we recently lost somebody under very strange circumstances, and somebody that was a very outstanding individual. That, I think, is the biggest thing I think I've heard from everybody that I have interacted with and communicated with about this particular event, or this death of this person. And is that it just doesn't make any sense to them that someone that is good-hearted and cares for everybody and does all the right things and is punctual and just one of those really great people could possibly be taken out of the equation of life. And why would a God or a creator allow someone that's good to actually be taken out, especially in the way that I've heard that it's happened? I don't have any true answers for that, but you wonder why some people can be as evil as no end and live to be 100 years old or older, or just live a really long life. And it just, in a lot of ways, doesn't make any sense. Once again, we know that we are not going to get out of this life alive. That is going to be all of our ultimate ends, that we are going to die. And it's just a fact. And there are some writings that suggest that there have been others that were ascended into quote-unquote heaven and didn't actually have to go through the death process. But I guess the real question is the fear in people actually dying or being dead, or is it really the dying process? To me, I think it could be both. Let's start with the death part, because a lot of people, including myself, believe that life goes on in some way, shape, or form. That we just change our point of attention. We become an energetic soul, or back to our soul, or back to the spiritual realm, and just become this not spiritual, but energetic being. We look at our lives, kind of like the reincarnation model. And then, at some point, choose to come back and incarnate in a body somewhere, or be directed to do the same. And there's a lot of religions that talk about going to a heaven or a place like heaven, golden streets, and listening to angels sing all day long, praising God, all these things. Yet it is amazing to me that, and I'm sure I'll be the same way if it happens to me, but even though we like to think, and many of us, I've heard a lot of people say that they cannot wait to meet Jesus, or they can't wait to meet God, or they can't wait to meet Allah, or whoever it is that someone believes in. And that's not part of this debate, or not debate, but this talk. But I can almost guarantee you that if you had a plane full of the same type of believers, and the same type of creator, and the same type of idea of the other side, where they would all go, and the joyous reuniting, there you go, of them and the creator, and how wonderful it's going to be. And they were on a plane, and the plane was going down in a fiery crash. I doubt seriously that you would hear clapping and joy that they're all going to go down in this fiery crash and die and go on to do this thing. I'm not saying that everyone would react in fear, and clawing and screaming and wailing and praying that they didn't have to die. But in large part, I'm sure all of us would be that way. Now, is it because the faith we think we carry in our belief is weaker than we think it is? Is the faith that we carry in what we believe is the afterlife, or where we go, is it really as solid as we think it is? I think once we're put to the test, I really do think that once we're put to the test, that, when it comes down to a life and death situation, that we would rejoice that we're moving on. Now, some people will. I'm not saying that everybody's the same. Someone that's in pain their whole life, and they're in this horribly long-term chronic disease, now they might celebrate dying. But I'm talking about the average human that has a quote-unquote somewhat regular life, and things are going okay physically, mentally, things like that, where they're presented with some event or some activity where it might cause them to die. I just can't imagine that someone is going to go, oh yes, we are ready to go, and we're going to go to the creator, and oh, it's going to be wonderful. No, that's not how we're built as humans, at least. We really do have to think about this, I think, because we're all going to be faced with that at some point. Via a car accident, or somebody pulls a gun on us. We're a soldier in war, or we're fighting a really horrible disease. And, we know that it's coming. That is also another paradigm here, is that when we do have something that we can semi-prepare for, the death doesn't seem as scary. Like if somebody has long-term Alzheimer's like my mother did, or somebody's fighting cancer for years and years and years, and at some point it's going to be inevitable that you're going to die or they're going to die. There's a little bit of preparation time, and even though the day of death is still difficult because that person is not really going to be physically and mentally there in your life ever again, it still gives you some time. I think what causes the most grief, not in the person who has died, the people that this person leaves behind, but it's those sudden death things, and those sudden death things that are caused by horrible other human beings, or people die in a horrendous way or a not so good way. Either way, though, sudden death of any person really tragically affects other people, the ones that they leave behind, because there is absolutely no preparation time. There's no lead up to it. There's no way to begin to adjust and know that you're going to have to adjust and know that things are coming that are going to change. From one instant to the next, that person is no longer literally going to be part of your life. And when those things happen, it is very, very difficult to adjust, especially for the people that were really close to them, to that person. And there's going to be a process of that grieving, and that's just the way we are built as well. And it is perfectly okay to go through that, and everybody should go through that. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I strongly encourage that people allow the feelings to go through when that happens. I think what I'm really trying to get to is that death itself is, in a lot of ways, very peaceful, because once you've died, whatever happens after that, none of us can really prove what's going to happen before that happens. In reality, if there is an afterlife or another process after that, we all hope there is, right? Or we wake up from a dream, or whatever it is that death finalizes or begins for us, it is still a very peaceful place to be. There's going to be no more problems. There's going to be no more worries. There's no bills. There's no timelines. There's no rushing to work. There's no traffic. There's no wars. None of that has to be thought of or worked through or struggled through anymore. That's kind of a quandary, though, if you think about it, because even though we're alive and now and we're going through a lot of those things, a lot of us would rather go through those things than not. The reason I'm talking about death being peaceful is because I had this experience last night, actually, that really spoke to that. And it also helped me, I think, understand what happens at least directly after physical death. Now, of course, these are experiences that I cannot prove, and I can't give you data or science to back it up. But I still would like to share it because I think, at least for me, it really helped me understand it a little bit better. And although I think I have quite a bit of understanding of it, it wasn't the same experience that I had last night. And it wasn't a very long-lived experience, but it was very powerful and very interesting and enlightening. And I was able to share it with people directly. So I'm part of this metaphysical group that is led by my mentor a couple of times a month. And you get together and you share experiences. And there's topics of the night. And there's always a drum journey at the last or latter part of the meeting where the drum is being beaten, and in a very rhythmic fashion in a specific way. And your goal is to lay down or sit up or whatever your meditation position is or practice is to get into that center space and allow the drumming to take you on a journey and to see something that is maybe separate or different from this reality. And it's just one of those things that you don't really want to force or put any logic to or left brain it. This is where you're allowing yourself to connect with the other side and those that guide you, and just allow them to show you something that you might need to hear, something that you might need to learn, something that you might need to know, some kind of direction, some validation. I mean, there could be a lot of different things. And meditation, if you have not heard me talk about it, is a very good way to do that. With drumming, it seems to be very effective. And to be honest, the first couple of times I ever meditated to a drum, it's very distracting, actually. But I've learned to figure out how to work with that rhythm. All the years of doing meditation, it's just now kind of just settle right into it. Anyway, we all got comfortable. Me personally, I just lay down with a pillow and it started. And let me give you a little background to maybe partly why I saw what I was seeing. And so I started my metaphysical journey really when I started all in, rather. It's been a whole lifetime journey, but when I really was going through my dark night of the soul and I dug in and I really, really, really did the work, and I can truly say at least 9 months to a year of my life, I was absolutely, literally 100% all in to learn how to connect and to hear and to do all that. One of my friends, my coworkers, suggested I get a past life regression. And as I was going through this, he said, there may be some things that are carried over from other lives that, you may need to address, or it might help you understand why you're the way you are. Anyway, it is very enlightening. We've talked about past life stuff before, so I'm not going to dwell on that here. Just did some random searches and ended up with the current mentor that I have as the person who did my first regression. So I've had many. And in this particular regression, just to make it short, I was, for years and years, it's like 10 years ago. And years, even though I went back into it, I kept seeing the same basic things. And I picked up other things and just understood that life a little bit better. So you can do that, actually. If you can go back in meditation on anything, any experience that you've seen or experiences that you want to see, and look around some more. And you can learn more things and gather more evidence and look at it differently. And so I did that for a lot of years of those 10 years, and I would go back in periodically. And about 6 months ago, I actually was shown something completely different and opposite. Not opposite, but of who this person was that I saw, that I had experienced as that person in that life. And it was a woman who I thought was Scottish royalty all these years. It turns out that I was not Scottish royalty at all, which I learned 6 months ago or so, that I was actually a sex slave for the Scottish royals. A woman, of course. Very good looking one, actually. It really changed the way I saw myself, because it helped to explain a lot of things. We won't go into all that. But the thing is, I was scrolling through Facebook randomly at work because it was actually slow for a change. It doesn't happen very often. And this post was up there, and it was of the scene of it almost identical to what I saw in my regression of this woman in her death. And it just completely stopped. And I saved the picture, and I've been waiting to see what the reason was that I was seeing this. And I knew it was going to come, because it always does. I don't think any of us get shown things that we don't eventually know why. Sometimes it takes a while. Sometimes it's quick. Sometimes we know right then. Sometimes we have to wait years. So this was only like last week or something. It wasn't really long ago. And so that's the background. And so as I started into this journey, I immediately found myself back in that particular space where I was observing this woman who I was before, as we just discussed, in almost the exact same way as the picture I just described that I saw on Facebook. And it was like I didn't quite initially understand why I was back looking at this, but I found myself just kind of in very peaceful role or space, and just really just observing the forest and the water that was there in front of us, and the woman, and just how peaceful she looked in death, because it wasn't an outwardly gruesome death, so it wasn't scary for one. I didn't question, I just allowed it to happen, but kind of in the back of my mind, I'm like, this is very, very nice, and I wonder why I'm here, seeing this. This woman, this soldier who I spoke of earlier, who had recently passed on, popped into my journey. And there she was, right? She talked to me about some things and talked about how it's okay. She's fine, that there's no reason to really struggle through figuring out why she died, and that she's fine. She in such a peaceful place, and she described all that to me and in great detail, and I could just feel that peace coming off of her. What we did then is she said, let's just experience what it's like in this space after physical death, before we travel to our Creator, before we make any decisions after that. And the rest of the time, basically, I sat with this soldier, hand in hand, sitting at the water's edge, and really just observing how peaceful this woman who I used to be was in the state of death. I mean, just absolutely, I don't even know how to describe it. It was just quite amazing to experience that, but also to be in that space where you're completely separated from any human emotions, any pain, anything that's a burden of being human. Now, I love being a human because, there's all those wonderful things, sex, food, music, all those things. I'm not discounting being a human because I love it. I love to be here for a very long time because I find it fascinating to be in this aliveness and get to experience these things. But at the same time, it was really quite amazing to understand the feeling or the not feeling, or how do you put it? Just that peace of nothingness, being everything and nothing, being somebody and no one, and just understanding what it's like after physical death, at least in that space before anything happens after that, right? Wherever we go after that. I found that to be absolutely an incredible experience. And I mean, the drumming may have been 5 to 8 minutes at best. I mean, it was really not long, but it seemed like I was in this space for a very, very long time. In spirit or outside of the body, time is really irrelevant. It is something that's just not part of the equation. And I found it to be such a good experience. I wanted to share it because I think what we are all really afraid of is the process of dying. And I'm not going to lie. I'm sure I will be too if once I'm faced with that. I almost got clobbered while I was riding on my motorcycle the other day. And so, those fears spike. And you know what that feels like when you go into survival mode, when you're almost got taken out of the equation. So we all do that. I think at the same time, knowing what it's like or what it feels like or not feels like, well, that's hard to describe. There's no words. I'm sorry. It was a really cool experience. And I hope that when I actually do pass and when it's my turn, that I get to experience that in reality. And right now, I don't say that what I'm being shown and what I got to experience the other night is not reality. But I think you know what I mean when it's actually happening and I'm not seeing it through my consciousness. And maybe that is all there is. Maybe it is all about consciousness. And that we are here and our consciousness is completely separate from us and we're living a life as a human, or we think we are. I'm saying a lot of things and maybe I'm not making any sense because, when you really experience these things and when you go places with your consciousness and you go places in visions and journeys and out of this reality in some way, shape, or form, it is very difficult to describe what that's like. As you see, I'm having a difficult time to do that. But I also want us to understand that we also need to learn to live while we're here, because we are all going to die. But the question is, are we going to live? And what does that mean? We all have to put our own meaning on what life is and what living is. We all want to aspire to do something. We all want to be magnificent. We all want to be known. We all want to have all the finer things in life. You're going to have to decide that for yourself, whatever that is. But I can tell you it is not the, eating, working, sleeping, dying thing, right? And consuming and doing all those things. It is about, I think, it's just the struggle to become better at something or becoming a better human being and to evolve and to aspire. And we are all finding ourselves in that space right now. We're moving into a whole new reality. We're in that ascension process, and there's a lot of terms for that. We're not going to banter about that. But we are all kind of waking up to ourselves, and a lot of people are not understanding it, and that's okay. And it was really interesting, too, in this group. There was somebody that's like really, 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 really brand new to this spiritual experience and this personal growth and this being bombarded from the spiritual world with all this information and all this wonderful things. And that was also beautiful to see. Not that you like to see people struggle and try to understand it, but you realize that, 10, 15 years ago, that was me. All of us can take stock in looking back at all the things we've been through and realize that we have a lot of trophies to polish up, that we actually have grown and we have become something else. And that's the real goal. If we look back and we have not changed, everything's the same, nothing's changed, then we're not growing. We have to learn what it is for us to live and to evolve and to become something. An ordinary life is fine. If that's what your idea of living is, that is absolutely fine. And so it is individual effort. It is our own path, and we have to decide that. So remember that death might seem final, but it might also just be the beginning. Of course, we don't know because we're not there. We don't know. Many people that have had near-death experiences or literally died and came back or were brought back or revived have always had experiences of other places that they've gone, that they've seen, that they've witnessed, that are just, some of them are not good, of course, but most of them by and large are just these wonderful experiences and all the things that I feel like I've been able to do through meditation. I'm not patting myself on the back. I'm saying it just takes practice and it takes learning and wanting to do it. We started this podcast with talking about death. Death can be very brutal in a lot of ways to those that are left behind, but not to the person necessarily who has died, because in my opinion only on this podcast, it is really only the beginning. of something new, a new journey. But if you have lost someone, which I'm sure most of us have out there, one of the things that we have to, I think, understand is that celebrating that person's life is, I think, the better thing to do, and not mourn our entire life. Take the time to mourn, go through the process, do the grieving, do all the things that are normal to do. Staying there for a life sentence is not serving anybody, because we are the ones that are still here. We still have others to take care of. We still have things to do. We still have our own race to run. And so we can carry those lessons about the person we've lost. We can look at their contribution and learn from that and carry their memory in a way that helps serve us and help us serve others. And so that we're not letting their death go in vain, that we are actually learning something from that and gaining experience and helping others with that experience. So as usual, what I would like to do is invite you guys to my website so that you can find my contact page and we can talk about these things, because I love to hear experiences. I love to understand others' experiences and maybe some of the crazy journeys and things that you've seen, so that I can learn and you can learn. We can all learn, and we're gather together as a group and discuss and learn from each other. So my website is lifebymazak.com, lifebymazak.com. Once again, find my contact page, reach out to me, and let's have a conversation. I look forward to hearing from you. You will hear from me again. Stay strong and live your life.